Good afternoon, and welcome to a beer with the Old Growler. That's me, Pete LaFrance. I'm the Old Growler. Yes, sir. It is 1 minute past 5 o'clock on the 20th of April, April 20th, 2020. And I believe this is the Old Growler number 21. I'm not too sure, but being to today at 4:20. Yes, okay, April 20th. Anyways, I think it's the 39th day of our no pubs, bars, or taverns. And so it's been my 39th day since then. And being a journalist, having published a couple of books, Cooking and Eating with Beer and Beer Basics, having covered the malt beverage industry, or the beer industry, if you like to call it that. Actually, the beverage alcohol industry, as a journalist, I've been covering it for about 30 years now. And in doing so, every day you go out and you either interview someone, or you're inevitably in a bar tasting beers, one way or another, pairing beers with food, that type of thing, and always taking notes and taking pictures and videos. And it's even as a freelance, it's quite it can keep you in shekels, you make a few bucks, but it's mainly it's what I do and what I did, or what I do. And so when they closed down the pubs, bars, and taverns of New York, I said to myself, what are you going to do about this? I mean, at 5 o'clock, it's after work, it's time to go have a beer. Well, if I can't go have a beer, why don't I invite my friends to come have a beer with me? And so I figured that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to invite everybody, and I get on the social media and everything, and I said, let everybody know that I'm here and ready to have a beer. So that's the introduction. That's what the reason for doing the Old Growler. And it is a Monday, and well, yes, it's Monday, and I've already mentioned that. Unfortunately, where I usually go get my growler to start out the festivities is the Henry Street Ale House isn't open on Mondays anymore. They're taking a day off their schedule, so I had to go invade the refrigerator. Now, this here is a Geuze, it's a big bottle, and I figure, well, what the hell, give it a shot. It's been in the fridge for, oh Lord, years. This is what it says, 2014, 6 years old. Okay, 8% alcohol by volume. It's a lambic aged in oak casks. Boone Brewery, Limerick, Belgium. Oh, it's a Belgian beer, a real live Belgian beer. Well, it's a little chilly. Old Geuze, Geuze Geuze à l'ancienne, old style Geuze. Here, bottle conditioned, and let's see here. Traditional Belgian Old Geuze, 100% spontaneous, fermented, lambic, aged for minimum of 3 years in oak barrels, fermented in the bottle, tart, dry, with excitingly complex aroma. In other words, it might stink. Best before 24/8/2037. Best before the 24th of August, 2037. I wonder if I should be opening this. It's 10 years too early, 17 years too early. Batch number 80602, 8% alcohol, product of Belgium. Who brought it in? Who does it say? Global Beer Network. All right, well, I have a strange feeling that this bottle was probably sent to me by these folks. Yeah, greetings, Monica. I have a feeling this was one of the beers that was being a beer, reportedly being a beer journalist. Breweries and importers and stuff send me product, and usually it's in the as we have the old format where we were in a bar, a real bar, and it was called Meeting Expectations. And what we would do is the bartender, Jerry Scott, myself, a friend, Jim Bennis, yeah, and usually 2 or 3 other people that were regulars at the bar, or sometimes some tourists, being that it's at the end of the Brooklyn Bridge, would take a look at the label on the beer bottle or whatever, and we would see if if whatever it's supposed to be as a consumer, what are we supposed to expect? And we figured out, well, okay, this is what we're going to expect. We poured it, tried it, and did it meet expectations? Yes. Did it not meet expectations? No. So, and sometimes they exceed expectations. But this one, this is wow, what the hell? I'm going to open. Well, first of all, it's cork finished, so it's going to be a pain in the ass to open. But hey, Mary, are you feeling better? That's my daughter, Mary, and I hope she's feeling better. She was not feeling so good a little while ago. Yeah. Whoa! Wow, that one started out quite brisk there, folks. Yes, sir, Bob. He was ready to jump out. Good. You had a nap. Excellent. All right. Shit. I've got the wrong glass for this, man. Why don't you kids just hold on and let me... Oh, fuck it. I didn't say that. This one? There's a white wine glass here. All right, let's... Oh, enough talk. Let's heft this little baby up. I don't have to worry about any disturbing any of the yeast down there because this has been sitting on his butt in that refrigerator since 2014, it says. Yeah. Well, that's remarkably clear for a bottle fermented beer. Wow, that's pretty good. All right, it's a good color. Oh well, of course it's a good color. For the style, it is what I would expect it to be. The head is falling quickly, but that might be because of the glass, or maybe because it is a little cool. The refrigerator is notoriously cold. Mm. That's a very pleasant. It's exactly the bottle, the look of the bottle, and what I know about Geuze, farmhouse style, cloudy, almost vinous type. I'm getting it right here. This is a really nice little piece of work. I'm looking down for bubbles. You know, I've seen bubbles. Well, yeah, the bubbles are incredibly small. It's very effervescent on the tongue, and then you look for them, and you're looking for, but they're not there. But they are. Oh. Come here, man. Robert, greetings. Good to see you. Cheers. Geez, I was going to say it's a Friday, but it's not a Friday. It's a Monday. But anyways, yes. Cheers, everybody. Oh boy, that's not a bad little beer. It's a nice dry finish. It's not a thick beer. It's very refreshing. Mariage Parfait. Um, and it's vintaged all right. Um, but it certainly has, it doesn't have a rustic look to it. I mean, that's not, this isn't farmhouse beer. Um, but it is, it gives the impression of a wine, that's for sure. And that's exactly the type of flavoring you get. Set that right over there. Oh, was it the character from Cheers, Norm, saying something along the lines of, he was asked to do a beer tasting, a blind beer tasting panel for one of the local breweries, and so he showed up and they poured the beer, and of course he downed it, and they had to, like, no, Mister, you have to. We're tasting it, saying, boy. So I think he's looking around and learning about the tasting technique, and so he, boy, this beer is pretty good when you stop to actually taste it. And I was remarking on the flavor of this and how much I enjoy it. Calls to mind when I first started looking at beer as something more than just something wet and that would get you faced as cheaply as possible without having to go into booze. Oh, and it was, I think, the first chance to really taste the beer for what it was on a trip. It was in the springtime. I remember that for at least 2 or 3 years. I know for sure 73 and 74. There would be a debate tournament held at McGill University up in Montreal. And Norwich University would send us a team up. I know Kerry O'Connell and I used to go up. And there was another fellow that I can't remember his name. It was a lot of fun because, and rather than this type of debate that was done in the United States, where you would get a topic for a year, such along the lines of, I remember one of the topics we did was national health. Should national health care be some kind of, should there be a national health care program? And we're talking as I say, 71, 72, 73, maybe 74. And so it was back then. And then what you would do is you would, for a collegiate debate in the United States, you'd get the topic for the year. And you would have to practice as either affirmative or negative on the topic. And the object was to get as much information as you possibly could to be able to take it with you. Now, this is before laptops. So we're talking file card cabinets. Some of these kids would roll these in. It was incredible. And it was a very, you had, I believe it was a 5-minute opening and then 10-minute to back up. Nice opening, 10 minutes to back up. And then there was a rebuttal and a closure. And all very, dignified, orderly. Well, the debate that they did up in Canada at McGill was parliamentary style debate. Now, Parliament is a heck of a lot different than our Congress. And I mean, if I may say so, a lot more fun. Because there's what they would do is it would be the topic. And I remember the person who was the speaker would go up and on a chalkboard he would write, or she would write, the topic. And one of the topics I remember distinctly was getting and spending, we lay waste our powers. And you were either for the government and defend it, or your loyal opposition and try and tear it apart. Well, oh God, and you could heckle. It was really a lot of fun. Points of order, points of information. Oh, it was a lot of fun. It was very, very free flowing, and you had a real chance to extemporaneous. I mean, you were thinking on your feet. I mean, you had to know what you knew, and whatever you knew, you brought in. And if you could use it well, it was always it was a lot of fun. But up there, I discovered Canadian beer. I think I've had a couple of bottles around here somewhere, but no, they disappeared. A lot of stuff disappears when you clean up. But anyway, so the Canadian beers up there were really flavorful, and so I fell in love with them. When we got back after the tournaments, we'd always bring a little back with us because we drove up, and we'd bring back some Brador. That was Labader Molson, one of the two, and we're heroes for a little while. But it got me to thinking about what beer was, and trying to explain the difference between discovering a difference between Canadian beers, American beers, and the different flavored beers. Not in that they flavored beers. It was the flavorings of beers. Whether there was like a stout or a porter. When you were used to just plain American style lagers, when you had a Canadian ale or a Canadian porter, it really woke you up. Well, I decided to do a little research, so I did, and was discovered that there was in the United States at the time a few small breweries, microbreweries, but even more exciting, there was this organization called the American Homebrewers Association, and they were homebrewing beer. And so I figured, well, I don't know about that. That sounds interesting. And my sister Linda worked in a bookstore in Ossining, New York, where we had our formative years. And in this bookstore, it was eclectic, and she brought me a copy of this Homebrewing Without Failures. Now, it was published in '65, but we're talking, well, I would be coming home from college to '74. It was 1969 to '74. '70 was probably 1975. And so I took a look at this, and she says, you're talking about beer. Well, why don't here's a book about it. And this was a fairly standard, it's a very small book. It gives some of the basic techniques to doing home brewing and what you would need and all of that. So I got a hold of it. I kept it, and tried reading about it, mainly to discover what beer was made like. Right? I didn't want to brew beer right away. And then, because of the homebrewers getting interested in that, they had a magazine called Zymergy, which has to do, Zymergy is the science of yeast and the study of yeast. And so there was a fellow out in Oregon, fellow by the name of Fred Eckerd, and he self-published in 1970 this book, a treatise on lager beers and how to brew them. And the reason that it was exciting lager beers is because lager beers are harder to brew because they need to ferment at a low temperature, probably around 38, 35, 37 degrees. And how do you, that's difficult to do. Ales are a lot easier to ferment. You can ferment an ale at room temperature. In fact, the fermentation tank, if you hold on, you put your hands around a homebrew fermenter, it's warm. I mean, the fermentation, the yeast will get going, and it can get up to 65 degrees in there. I mean, easy. Although I think anything above that kill yeast. But anyways, So I started looking into this, and um, I was living in Manhattan. I just moved to Manhattan in '76. And there was a store, a wine making store called Mylan Labs down on Spring Street. And they dabbled in, because they brought in huge cans of concentrated grape must for the people that, especially I guess in Little Italy, there they would be people that would make wine at home in the basements or whatever. And so they dabbled in beer making supplies because it was put out by the same company that was imported from Canada. And I can't remember. Wine Art. Wine Art was the name of that. Yes, Wine Art was the company. And they would also export to the United States malt syrups in big cans and sachets of brewer's yeast and little packets of dried up old hops. But we thought that was hot shit. So I was all set. I went down to my lamb with a buddy of mine, Jim Glass, and we walked in and we said we wanted to start home brewing beer. And so the fellow behind the counter says, "Oh, well, you're going to need this fermenter, and you're going to need this bucket, and you're going to need this hose, and you're going to need this saccharometer, and you're going to need this thermometer, and you're going to need." And so we says, "Well, wait a minute, hold on, back up, back the truck up. Wait, we're going to think about this." So we thought about it for a while. We got back in the old subway, and back when you could do that, and trundled off. And for some, I don't know how it happened. I think, again, it was because of the Wine Art connection. For some reason, Jim found out that there was in Elmsford, New York, there was an actual homebrew store. Or maybe I found it through Zymergy. I must have found it through Zymergy, and I convinced Jim to drive with me out to Elmsford, to this wine art store. So we went out there and we walked in, and the guy greeted us, "Hi, how's it going?" And we said, he says, "Well, what are you looking for?" And we said, "Well, we want a homebrew beer." And he said, "Well, what kind?" And we said, "Well, we were just we just found what we've got John Bull Malt over here, and we've got a couple of others. There was a couple of brand names that were British." And he says, "How much room do you have to work with?" And we says, "Well, an apartment." And oh yeah, nostalgia for the subway. That is kind of a thought, isn't it? But anyways, we talked to the fella, and he told us, and we said, "Well, how about equipment?" And he says, "Well, how much do you want to do this? I mean, there's some basic equipment that you're going to need. You're going to need a large soup pot, a stock pot. So if you've got one of those, use that. You're going to need some kind of a plastic bucket. And if you have one, you can also put a garbage bag liner in there and use that for your primary fermenter, but make sure that you've got something to put over the lid. And you're going to have to get that liquid from that container into another container for a secondary fermentation. Usually it's a glass container of some sort, but you can use anything you want, really, but as long as you can get it from one container to another. Maybe you can use another garbage can, but make sure that you have a liner in there, because the garbage or the plastic is sometimes, not so good. And then you're going to have to bottle it. And now I've got bottles here, but the best way is to empty your own. So you get the 12-ounce bottles. As soon as you got a collection of about a case of them, maybe 2 cases, then you're ready. But you're going to need bottle caps and a capper, and I've got those here. But in fact, you can buy that right now if you want. So we said to him, well, we were just talking to a fella in New York City that said you needed glass things and all kinds of things. And he says, well, yeah, if you want, but you don't really need them to start out with. I mean, it would really help to have a thermometer, and this thing here is a saccharometer, which tells you how much sugar is in what you want to ferment your beer into. Those are two really important things, and I would suggest that you get those would be the first things to get, and then try and figure out what type of equipment and what size you want to do. So we trusted this guy. He was straight on. So he was the guiding light to us to getting the equipment. And let's see, we started fermenting in his apartment, and yeah, because I was living on 90th Street at the time, and there was just no room at all there. Fermented beer here, yes. When I moved in 86, yeah, maybe that. It's tough to do the math. Yeah, I did a couple of, in fact, many beer homebrews here. In fact, picked up a couple of local awards. I think my favorite homebrew story would be there's a Google up if you want to chef Rick Moonen, M-O-O-N-E-N-E. He runs a couple of restaurants in Las Vegas. He used to run Oceana here in New York City, in Manhattan. A very well-known chef, and he was in. He had something. We were introduced through, I believe, a meeting that had to do with Anchor Steam beer, and so he found out that I was homebrewing, and so he said, could he come over and watch? And so I said, of course, of course. So it was a Saturday. And the doorman, we live in a doorman building, doorman called up and said, there's a Rick Moonen here. I said, oh yeah, sure, send him up. And we're only on the 3rd floor. So if the elevator's slow, it takes a few minutes. If you walk up the steps, it only takes a few less. But anyways, so after about 10 minutes, so finally I go to the door and take a look. And here's Chef Moonen going up and down the hall. And he's oh, Peter, wow. There's some really good cooks in this apartment. So I thought that was a lot of fun. That's my homebrew story. And yes, he did. He watched, I believe it's probably brown ales. I used to do a lot of brown ales and stouts because they were a lot easier to ferment because they were very forgiving. If you did a lager or a pale ale, if you screwed up in the balance of the bitter, the hop, and if you had a particularly strange yeast, you were pretty much screwed. I mean, there was no margin for error. Where with porters and stouts, you can pretty much do anything you want. Cheers. How are we doing on time? Oh, we're getting down there. Oh, boy, the more I drink it, the better I like it. There's some kind of note down here, computer bullshit. Okay. Well, as I said, I've been drinking this Geuze, which is 8% alcohol. Okay, well, it's not a session beer. Oh. And I've introduced this young fellow before. Liar's Bench Young Upstart IPA. We're going to taste that today. I saw the picture that I sent out. And this other one, Not at Noon. I think, yeah, Not at Noon, which is a Russian Imperial Stout. And I bet you this little baby runs up high in the alcohol content too. Whoa, 12%. Fat chance. Okay, yeah, I can only handle 1 10%er. So, boy, that poor little devil, he sits over there. He's Not at Noon is, this is the second appearance on the Old Growler, and he hasn't been chosen yet. Boy, this is embarrassing, I tell you. Oh, that is a nice beer. Well, any it would let's what was I? Oh, yeah, The Art of Making Beer. I hadn't seen it. Oh, I know why I have this one. This was cool. It was published up in Canada, and it had stout recipes in it, and I was infatuated with that. And to show one of the real classics, if you are thinking of home brewing or watching home brewing or whatever, Charlie Papazian was the founder of the American Homebrewers Association. And boy, oh boy, if there's anybody that has done anything to popularize home brewing, he certainly did. And recently, I think, maybe it was last year, he stepped down from the board of the directors there, I guess it was. I'm not too sure what all the political names in it is, but he's taking it easy now. And I had a chance to meet him a couple of times, once up at in Colorado at the Great American Beer Festival, and a nice guy. I mean, really just and very exuberant, and one of those people who you get a real impression that he likes listening to you, and what you say is important to him. So, very gifted guy, and a good writer, a writer as well. But the whole growth of the home brewing groups helped and was fostered by the microbreweries. And the microbrewers, of course, were originally home brewers. And the effects that the small breweries have had on the way Americans look at beer and at food, I think, has really proven to be something very, very, very interesting. The whole artisanal beers, artisanal foods, going back to vintage beers and I'm sorry, heritage vegetables. I mean, it's been quite an effect. Quite an effect. Oh boy. Okay, well, why don't I take a look at this young upstart? Anyways, because this is a beer that I can sample up a little bit, I'm sure. So we're going to do exactly what we would do at the bar, since we are here at the Old Growler's bar. The service here stinks, and the food. Well, food's not too bad. In fact, Wednesday, stop by, and we're gonna have beer soup on Wednesday. Wednesday, I'm being sponsored by my alma mater, Norwich University, and it will be beer in the kitchen. So we'll be talking about cooking with beer, and I'll have, as I say, some beer soup to share with you, as well as some stories of my life up there in New England, Vermont, in Norwich University, when I was a young cadet. And hopefully we'll have some people visiting from the Alum Association, and we'll have a jolly good chat, a good chinwag. Okay, well, let's look at here. A Liar's Bench in a beer company. It's in Portsmouth, New Hampshire. It's 16 fluid ounces, 6.6% alcohol by volume. And it looks like the picture there looks like a fellow in a suit with some stalks of barley coming out of the top of the suit. And it calls itself an IPA. Okay. And it says here, oh boy, they tell you a lot of information on this one. It's got 52 bittering units. The grain is the Golden Promise, Pilsner, Caramalt, and Rye. The hops are Simcoe, Pacific Jade, and Citra. And it says empty lies. They say arrogant, we say confident. They say big for their britches, we say motivated. They want to illustrate market trends with pie charts and PowerPoints. They want focus groups and targeted demographics. Us, we're just going to do one thing. We're going to make an IPA that's bright and balanced, that boasts apricots, passion fruit, and pine. And if they're bitter about it, well, we ain't. I like that attitude. Okay, it shows. It does. It shows an attitude. And the corporate kind of guy on dressed on there, again, it shows an attitude. So I'm looking forward to a beer with an attitude. That's what I'm looking forward to. And it's 6% alcohol, not that high. The bittering units, 52 is a little bitter, but the hops, Citra, I know very well. That's a lemon type of a flavor. The Simcoe and the Pacific Jade, I'm not too positive about them. The grains, so this is going to be a relatively light colored beer. And it has some, it says caramel in here. And carapils is a type of grain that it's a Pilsner, it's a grain, carapils, that adds body. So it's going to give the beer a good mouthfeel, like a rich wine, but not a wine. All right, let's crack this open and see if it meets expectations of being light colored, nicely popped, slightly citric beer. Okay. Well, if I could get a head like that, I'd be a millionaire. Look at that. All right. Well, that's a good 2 fingers. That's good. It's okay. Come on. Does it say it? It says it's an IPA, but it's a what? Or they're calling these days a New England or a Northeast IPA, which means cloudy. I mean, okay. Well, I'm a smidge disappointed in the cloudy. I should have looked forward to it. Oh, and this is actually a retasting. I did taste this once at the ale house with the crew. I'll have the link underneath in the description box, and it'll be interesting to see if what I experienced today is anywhere near what I experienced in the past. Ready? Okay, well, we've already spoken about the look. Boy, that's a strange freaking nose. No, the nose is on your face, Peter. That's an aroma. It's called a nose. Shut up. Yeah, that's that. I wouldn't say it's off-putting. It's intriguing. I'll put it that way. Well, folks, nothing happened. From the aroma, I was expecting some kind of funky flavor. No. From the bittering units, that I was expecting something bitter. No. From the carapils, I was expecting a thicker, fuller bodied beer. No. Boy. Such an intriguing aroma. I can't place it. I mean, it must be one of the it must be one of the hops that they use in here, because I've never, maybe Pacific, I don't know. I'm gonna have to go and do a little research. But the kids, this one did not meet expectations. Well, sometimes that happens. I'm going to go back to the, I'm going to take a gaze at the Geuze. Well, who do we have left? It looks like we've got two of us, or two of you and one of me. That's a trio. Well, let's see. I've chit-chatted about homebrewing. I've chit-chatted about how I managed to find out about flavors in beer. Since there's only three of us left, I'm pretty sure you're both subscribers, so I'm not going to go into that spiel. For those of you who are watching this at a later date, I'm sure you can understand that inspiration comes occasionally, and occasionally it doesn't. Okay, curious about meeting expectations. There's exceeding and falling short of. But if you like it in an unexpected way, is that defying expectation? You know, yes, that has happened. That has happened. Yes, when I get a beer, and I expect something. Oh, geez. I think the best illustration is when I first came across an American wheat beer. Wheat beer, as I understood it, and I still understand it, but it was my concept of wheat beer was based on Bavarian wheat beer from the breweries in Munich and in the areas around that part of Bavaria. And they are served in tall glasses, and it's relatively cloudy, big head on it, and it has an aroma of cloves and banana, and some of the little clove, especially clove flavor, because of the yeast fermentation. Okay, so I was handed a glass of American wheat beer, and it looked like a wheat beer. It had a head like a wheat beer. It was served in a wheat beer glass, but when I took a sniff of it, there was no cloves, no aroma, no banana, nothing. And I tasted, and what the f is this? It's not. That's not a wheat beer. And then it was explained to me that Peter, it's an American wheat beer. Okay, it's brewed. It's fermented with American yeast and not Bavarian yeast. So after two or three of them, I could understand it. So I had to adjust my mind. So every once in a while, I'll get a beer that will taste fantastic if it wasn't named what it was. And so, yes, that has happened. That a beer has been, well, I wouldn't say mislabeled, but it's misrepresented. Similar to, you know, meeting a very attractive person and finding out they have a brain too. It's kind of one of those things. So yes, that happens. And defying expectations. What defy? Oh God, that's an interesting use of the word, to defy expectations. No, because it's not defying it. It is, and it's not exceeding it. Transcending expectations. That's what happens when a beer that I pour out of a bottle or a can is fantastic, but isn't what it was advertised as. Yes, it transcends expectations. Yeah, that's. I love playing with words like that and trying to really to work out the definition of them. Oh, it's so difficult today, particularly particularly in the climate that we're in. And this is just plain bar talk. Um, to me, it's very frustrating because, and Monica, I think you can probably understand this, or I would love your thoughts on this as well, is that when we hear from, oh, getting down here to the leaves, when we hear from medical experts speaking, except for Dr. Fauci, he's straightforward, man. That dude, I dig him. But they're talking about trying to do this and trying to do this and they're talking about the best of all possible worlds. Now, we don't operate in the best of all possible worlds, and they're using jargon that I was told once, and I really hate to bring this up, but I was told once by Ben, I think it was Ben Hogue, who was editor at the Daily News back in the 80s when I was freelancing in Bev Media, and I was pitching a story on radio, ethnic radio. And I pitched the story to him. I showed him the first draft, and he said, "Peter, you have to dumb this down." He says, "Because our readership has maybe an 8th grade, 9th grade level of reading." So that's what we're dealing with. And when experts speak, they speak in jargon, and they speak in wanting the best possible case scenarios. And then you have people speaking that are talking politically, and they're using worst possible case scenarios. Nothing, communication is an incredibly difficult thing at the best of times. And now trying to pick words and trying to, it's a puzzlement, and it's a problem, because there's not really, communicating is very difficult at the best of times, and now it's a real challenge, particularly when attitude is, and nuance, and trigger words and all that kind of good stuff. Confusing expectations. Confusing expectations. It would be no. I'm thinking misdirected. If I'm misdirected. Wow. That's a good experiment. I'm gonna have to think about that, because once we get back into the bar, we're gonna have to come up with some refinements, I'm sure, as far as techniques, or I certainly hope to have a better sound recording, that's for sure. Well, in case anyone is, well, I tried looking up Liar's Bench, Young Upstart, on their website, and there's very little information, so I'm not too sure that they're running it anymore. But tomorrow we'll try Not at Noon by Interborough. We'll make that the heavy hitter. Oh boy. Anyways, looks like we've got somebody drop in. Greetings. Welcome to the Old Growler and having a beer with the Old Growler. It's good to see you, whoever you may be. Oh, I am the good morning voice of WOLD, playing all the hits for you wherever you may be. The bright good morning voice who's heard but never seen. Oh, going on 45, feeling all of 45, going on 15. Oh, that's a good Geuze. Well, let's see, how are we doing? 5:49, 50 minutes. We've been on for 50 minutes. I want to thank anyone who is still with me for hanging out. Monica, I know you're there. Robert, I certainly hope you're out there. And thanks very much, folks, for stopping by. And for those of you who are watching this at a later date, after the 20th of April, I thank you for lasting this long. I mean, this is an hour, so you can fast forward, I'm sure, back and forth. But wow, I really thank you very much. So, hoping, oh boy, it is an effervescent beverage. Hoping all, as I would always end the tastings, meeting expectations. I'm Pete LaFrance for BeerBasics.com, the Old Growler, hoping I'm hoping that right now your life meets expectations. Thanks very much for coming and being with me. I really appreciate it.